throw a chopper at me, I can run quickly. I can run fast. So please consider this very carefully. Professor Joseph Lee. President, I speak in support of the motion moved by Alvin Young to adjourn the debate. Before I spoke, some colleagues reminded me you shouldn't be doing stand-up comedy because this is no longer about filibustering. We need to have a concrete discussion. And, last time, we were the guide a tour guide of children. Sometimes we do that. We were the docent for a group of school children, and I told the school children that this council is responsible for enacting laws, vetting government spending, and so on. Now, after reading about the functions of the council, I don't know what to say here. Why? Now, I think I need to explain why I support Mr. Alvin Young's motion to adjourn. There is this bulky document of amendments to the rules of procedure. I tried to sum them up in one sheet of paper, but I still don't get it after I read it. For this red book, I read about Mr. Paul Jie's amendment to replace the Chinese character "go." And then Mr. Ip Kin Yun also gave me an article about "go," and I couldn't follow. No, so I have to repeat the point. Can we cover all the arguments in 50 minutes? Of course not. Then this morning, I heard some members said that this is urgent. We have to pass it before Christmas, so that's why our meeting is scheduled till Monday. So I'm a victim because my panel, cannot hold a meeting on Mondays. We have to reschedule. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We can. But still, I am trying to read all the documents, and I wanted to ascertain whether it's really so urgent. Now, this morning I was at a graduation ceremony. I was clapping so hard, my palms were painful. But anyway, I tried to study all these amendments. Now, if there is this urgency to amend the rules of procedure, then I would think that in 2018, this council is going to operate more smoothly. Members are better able to perform their duties and to the benefit of the community. Is that the case? Now, because if that's the case, and then I see there's an urgency, I will vote against Mr. Alvin Young's motion, and then we could quickly vote on the amendments, and then we can all have a Merry Christmas, and then this council is going to operate with great efficiency and effectiveness. Is that the case? Now, I must own up that I haven't read all the amendments, but I've read some of the amendments. And then my first question is it really that urgent? And I also asked myself the question that, is it true that after we incorporate these amendments, then this council would operate more smoothly and members will be better able to discharge their duties? Now, I'm not trying to challenge anybody here. I'm just using Mr. Paul Jie's amendments as example. So there's a large number of amendments to replace the Chinese character "go" with another Chinese character "go." But how urgent is it really? Why must we pass these amendments by Monday? I don't know. I don't get it. Well, I don't know, President, whether you still have the powers to take out the less urgent amendments, and then we could pass the more urgent amendments first. I don't know if that's the case. But anyway, after I read it, I don't understand what it's about. And then I read the amendments moved by Mr. Wu Chi-wai, one of us. Okay? And he said that even during the MPC meeting period, we should have council meetings here. No, but is it urgent really? Whether we have meetings or not, we've done either way, but is it that urgent? So I don't see it. And then Mr. Ray Chen has also moved a few amendments. Again, I studied his amendments. The second amendment is that you can use Putonghua or Hong Kong dialect, I dare not say Cantonese, or English to chair meeting. But it's always been allowed. So is it really urgent? And then there's another amendment I don't follow. He proposes to amend Rule 24. Now, I'm not going to go into the content of the amendments. I just try to assess whether these amendments are urgent or not. And if they're not urgent, then I will support Mr. Alvin Young's motion to adjourn. Now, Mr. Ray Chan's amendments to Rule 24(4). That is, each member may ask no more than 2 questions without notice. And each member will get another slot for a question without notice in each session. Now, but, is it urgent? Because you can approve such arrangements, and why is it that there a need to amend the rules of procedure? And now, Mr. Martin Leo's amendments, for Rule 20, of course, they are controversial. But for the others, which are not controversial, but after I read them, I don't understand. I checked the red book. Now, Rule 45 is that the amendment is that the rules will apply to all. 45 will apply to all committees and not just the council. So I tried to see what Rule 45 is about, and then I wonder again whether it's urgent. But so is it really so urgent that we must pass all these amendments to the rules of procedure by Monday? I have great doubts here because I don't follow. And then coming back to our allies, Dr. Fernando Cheung moves an amendment so people could speak with sign language. We have sign language interpreters. It's expensive, but I know that LESCO has always been providing that service. So again, how urgent is that? And then Mr. Dennis Kwok moves amendments on technical, legalistic issues. I don't follow them. If I don't follow them, then others definitely don't follow them. But is it really that urgent that we need to pass these amendments? Would it really help to enhance our efficiency or operation? And then Mr. Alvin Young also moves amendment that is for Rule 92 for matters not provided for in rules of procedure. The President may consult the relevant panels or committees as necessary. I said, is it really urgent? I wouldn't say I'm a very hard-working member, but I've been sitting here for a long time. But really, if we move amendments to such a rule, would it really enhance our operation? I have doubts again.
Mr. Charles Mock's amendment to 6.5, and that is the Secretary of LESCO has to keep a video recording of our proceedings for checking afterwards. How urgent is that? I have spent more than 7 minutes on the urgency of these amendments. Now, because there's the deadline set by the President to have these passed before Christmas so that LESCO can operate smoothly. I still don't understand how smooth our operation can be with these amendments. Now, I told K3 kindergartens these 3 points with these amendments. I don't know whether I can still discharge my functions. Now, Ms. Tanya Chan's 3 amendments. I don't want her to scold me. I don't know how her amendments can make this council to operate more smoothly. Mr. Jeremy Tam, he wanted to adjourn this motion. And Mr. Jeremy Tam's motion by 11(1)(a). All meetings of the councils should be open meetings, and RoP 88 except otherwise stated. And I think RoP 88 will require the public and also the press to withdraw, and it caused an uproar here. And then Dr. Kokaki's amendment to rules covering a finance committee, and then the quorum should be 1/3 of the members instead of 8. All right, there are 40-odd amendments. How many of them can ensure smooth operation of this council and to enhance our ability to monitor the government, to enact legislation, and to examine the budget? I fail to understand. Since I can't understand, why should we cause all matters or business to give way so that we can discuss this amendment? So Mr. Alvin Young's motion asks us to shelve this for the time being. Some of the amendments to the RoP haven't been thoroughly discussed. So is there a real urgency for them to be passed so quickly? I really doubt it. And you may say that they are really urgent because with these amendments we won't have so much filibustering and we would have less sittings aborted. Now we're all here whether you are members who filibuster or those who have to suffer filibustering. I have to put this question to you. The reason why we filibuster here is because of this distorted representation of public opinion. We have 20-odd members here, and in fact we have more votes than you, but many motions are vetoed because the government doesn't like them. So how can we monitor the government? This is because of distorted representation in this council that we would like to provide checks and balances, and we use filibuster to stop the passage of some bills. But of course, you may be fed up with filibustering. Some call it a farce, or some call it an abuse. But this is a means. This is the means rather than the end. As a legislator, and I'm sure all of you feel the same, we're not here to filibuster. We want to discharge our functions. I fail to see how these amendments to the RoP can reduce or prevent filibustering and cause less sittings to be aborted. So why the rush? Since they cannot achieve this purpose, well, you may think that it will continue filibuster. Now, if before Monday all these dozens of amendments are passed, we can prevent filibustering, we can stop meetings from aborted, and the government can then administer effectively. Well, if by amending the RoPs, in fact, some of the RoPs have profound impact. For instance, I quoted one example, 26 would cause the threshold for lodging petition from 20 to 30. I've been here for more than a decade, and I have participated in petitions. It is an excellent mechanism. Now, if a select committee is vetoed in House committee, a select committee has got an imperial sword to summons witnesses. If we can't have that, at least we can have petitions to set up a select committee. Now, if the threshold is set too high, then our opportunity to seek redress for issues will be greatly curtailed. We are, in effect, undermining the power of LegCo to seek redress for the community and to monitor the government. So how urgent is amendment to this? If members and also the government think that this is the right time to undermine the powers of this council so that the government can do whatever it pleases, perhaps not. The CY Leung administration is over. Carrie Lam has given out a lot of sweetness, and she has extended the transport fare concession to GMBs, and she will not allow electricity tariff to be increased. Now, by amending the RoPs, our rights to speech would be curtailed. It's not that all members are like me who don't really like to speak too much. Some members have a lot to say, so I don't see how amending the RoPs can achieve any purpose. Now, and as some members said, this will cause the president to enjoy too much powers. And also the quorum of the sitting will also be lowered to 20 instead of half of the members here. Now, I am a lay person in law. I don't know whether this is legal or not, but there may be a judicial review, a judicial challenge if this amendment is passed. So even doing all these things, I don't see how we can enhance the ensure that we can play our part better. If we use Mr. James To's argument, we may see the political struggles seen in Sierra Leone's days revived. Is that what we want to see? And as when it comes to the voting, will all pro-establishment members support amendments from the pandemic? I don't know. Your time is up. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. President, I moved a motion under RoP 16.2 for the debate to be adjourned. I really want members from the pro-establishment camp to reconsider the proposed amendments to the RoP by Dr. Martin Liu. Is it really? Because of the bundled up arrangement, as a result, members cannot take different positions on different amendments to the RoP. I know it's not easy to change our mind, to make you change your mind, but then on this point, two former presidents of this council have said that given the major change to this rule, it is quite likely that it may face a judicial challenge. And President, even the independent legal advice you sought indicated that there is a high risk that this amendment is unconstitutional. Of course, Dr. Martin Liu has consulted another legal advisor, giving him entirely different view, and then that is accepted by the president. Should this council take the risk? Should we take a course of action which face a very high risk of being unconstitutional? We have to understand what will be the change to the ecology of this council after passing these amendments. Perhaps at committee stage, 35 members will have to sit here, and it may be a bit, it may be a pain for your pro-establishment members, but I think this amendment is about whether we should have 35 or 20 members sitting here to maintain a quorum. Now, if we can have 35 members here so as to ensure that we will not violate the basic law, and should we be more cautious? The most important function of this council is to discuss issues. Of course, you may feel that sitting here is a pain, and you have to sit still to face the challenges from the pandemic to the pro-establishment camp. But you cannot guarantee that the day may come when the Liberal Party has to pressurize the government on a certain issue at the request of your own constituents. I understand that the Liberal Party is strongly against the extra stamp duty. On various occasions, they have said that the special stamp duty has distorted our real property market and is one of the causes for our exuberant property market. Now, you put yourself in our shoes when you have to be accountable to your own constituency and your voter. I think you would also resort to all means to ensure that your proposals will be accepted by the administration. So the RoP can be invoked by different camps in this council. And once the rules are changed, it would only allow the president enjoy even greater powers. Now, you have also always heard that a ruling under 44 is already final. That is, the ruling by the president is final. But once these amendments are passed, then even any motion that can be given now without any notice will need the consent of the president first. Now, if we hand over to the president all these powers, well, we are the minority here. The Pandems are the minority here faced with the pro-establishment camp. But even within the pro-establishment camp, there are smaller parties, because the DPA and also the LP are not the same as the FTU and DAB. Your interests are not always in alignment. Otherwise, there is no need to have different political parties here. You can merge to form one big political party. So we are the minority here. We are the disadvantaged group in this council. And we can use the RoP to challenge the pro-establishment camp. Now you want to snatch this power away from us, and you will allow the majority of this council to ensure that bills are passed or motions are passed, but you should ensure that there is room for the minority to discuss issues, to raise challenges, and even to make use of this process to force the government to change its position. Now, if this is dispensed with, then this council will just become a rubber stamp. And is that the goal for this council? In fact, when motions are presented to this council, our questions and challenges, we always want to point out that the government hasn't done a good job of consultation.
Without proper consultation, if the government wishes to bulldoze the motion through, and if you are not happy about it, what should we do? Must we knock on the doors of the major political parties to make the government change? Of course not. And in the council, we can have lengthy debates. We can have very detailed questions put to the government as part of our duty. Must we also give up our duty in such a way so as not to get in the way of the government? Well, I talked about the special stamp duty and other anti-speculation measures. The Liberal Party colleagues had repeatedly pointed out that the administration had not conducted consultation rapidly. It was a rash decision, and the market landscape would definitely change. And in fact, after introducing the anti-speculation measures, your prophecy came true. Property prices continued to soar. Despite your prophecy coming true, you have not done your best to stop the government, and you have not fulfilled your duty. Mr. President, it's not just the pan-democrats. In the pro-establishment camp, there are also smaller political parties, such as the BPA, which may find themselves helpless in the face of government motions. Well, even for the DAB, if in the face of an unfavorable government motion, what he proposed was to set up a committee and to criticize the administration in this council and nothing else. As a member of this council, we should do our job. We should speak out for the people. And if you're a member returned by a functional constituency, then you should all the more speak on behalf of your constituents. you should not be the sycophant of the administration. On the 29th of October 1998, when the Provisional Legislative Council deliberated on the Employment Relations Miscellaneous Provisions Ordinance Bill, during the second reading of the bill, only 8 members spoke, and then the examination of the bill completed in just several hours. Did the FTU members agree with the bill? Your versions have been inconsistent. You talked about the class action or negotiation, collective bargaining rights as your bread and butter, and yet you did not even take part in the debate. The bill was passed just after several hours of debate. Can you really represent the interests of the labor sector? If not, then you should give up striving for collective bargaining for the labor sector, because at the outset you didn't fulfill your responsibility anyway. On what ground can you now suggest that you should strive for bargaining power for the labor sector? If the government now once again introduces this bill and tries to bulldoze it through, I believe that the FTU will join hands with the Pan-Democrats to prevent the government's draconian bill from being passed. Because only by doing so would you be able to safeguard the interests of your FTU members or the public. But you're giving it all away. You're giving up. You're putting aside your public mandate and your public support. Is it reasonable? There will be Article 23 legislation very soon. If again this is bulldozed through, then within just a very short period of debate, the bill will be passed and there will not be a chance for the public to strike back. There is no chance for us to discuss whether Article 23 legislation will not cause a major rally in the community or public repercussions, or that people's freedom will not be affected. Without careful deliberation on the bills, we will be under the totalitarian rule. And there are also functions and roles of the electrical stipulated in the basic law, and all these will become meaningless apart from scrutinizing government bills. What the council must do is to forge consensus and agree on proposals and set aside our differences in a hope of trying to change the administration. Well, we're facing the issue of divisions. And very often we see this very absurd situation. Despite having majority support, a bill would be vetoed. Can we change the situation just by amending the RoP? If this council is being rendered toothless to a state that it becomes something like a provisional legislative council or the NPC, then there will be losing a platform for discussion, and different political ideas will only be voiced in the community through different social movements, and there will be more social conflicts, and the grievances can only be aired through social movements. How can we have good governance in Hong Kong? I'd like to appeal to members very solemnly to think again. If the RoP is amended, would we really be able to bring benefits to society? We are compromising for the sake of so-called efficiency, and we must ask whether we are fulfilling our duty as an elected member in this council. We should rethink. And finally, with all these amendments to the RoP, I think that Rule 20 regarding petition is the least or is the way of making our voices heard without compromising the efficiency of the Council. This morning we had a number of petitions made, and 20. We need a quorum of 20 in order to present a petition of a matter close to the heart of the community, and the matter will be passed on to the committee for further deliberation. If these issues can only be discussed by major political parties, it is not what a fair council should do. Mr. Ted Hui. Thank you, Mr. Leung. I speak in support of Mr. Alvin Yeung's motion to adjourn the debate. Like Mr. Alvin Yeung and other members said, we should take this opportunity to stop and think. Like other members said, in relation to our role in the basic law, in the Constitution, and for the benefit of Hong Kong, is it really good to amend the RoP? In the past few months, or since some members have been disqualified, there have been a very fierce struggle in the Council. This is not what the public want. This is not the norm of this Council. I think Mr. Paul Chair can be a good example, because he was so emotional and agitated, and he even got physical. The administration has stopped tabling bills and resolutions on subsidiary legislation. None of the matters relate to people's livelihood issues. The struggle goes on. The Council is operating in such a way that is totally not conducive to the community's development. And I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss in this debate to adjourn the motion, the motion to adjourn the debate, what the struggle is about. Did the Pan-Democrats start filibustering for no reason at all? Or if we did start filibustering, can we ask why we did that? Since the beginning of this term, we've seen the disqualification of members because of the doing of the government, because of the combative nature of C.Y. Leung administration. Matters arising in this Council were taken to court. As a result, goalposts were moved. There was interpretation by the MPCSC, and let's rethink. Everything started there. Well, the pro-establishment camp and even voices in the community have said that it is actually our doing that caused disqualification of members. But in fact, it was MPCSC's interpretation that resulted in the judgment. You may not agree with the members disqualified, and yet they represent people. If they have public backing, if they're elected to express their political views in this Council, they should be respected. Must we resort to a struggle so that they could be disqualified? And that's the beginning of the whole thing. The combative struggle actually started with the administration and also the MPCSC interpretation, of course, with the cheating umpire, Mr. President. You also help them you claim yourself to be a victim in judicial review cases. You, a victim, but you made the wrong decisions. The same applies to the proposed amendments to the RoP. Legal advice strongly suggests that if the quorum of the committee stage is lowered from 35 to 20, it will be breaching the basic law, and yet you just allow it to go ahead. You engage other legal counsel so that you can have a piece of legal advice to your liking. So after all, you're just a cheating umpire, Mr. President. You're being selective about the legal advice. And you make this decision this time such that motions that may be breaching the basic law are allowed to be tabled. At the end of the day, the court may rule that it is unconstitutional and that it may be against the basic law. So you need to be politically accountable, Mr. Leung. You should apologize. You should step down. That's the reason why we're in such a struggle. It's because of the administration's wrong, your wrong, and also the pro-establishment camp who take this strike stealthily to amend the RoP. You're loyalists, and even more, you want to be slaves. On your own initiative, you propose to amend the RoP so as to take away powers of the legislature. We are used to struggles between the pan-democrats and the pro-establishment camp. It happened in previous terms as well, and the council was distorted. It has always been distorted because we have functional constituencies and small circle elections. That is why, for the pan-democrats, despite winning a majority outside in the council, they are the minority. This is a common refrain. We're used to political struggles anyway, but why is it that now we're being so combative?
That's because of the pro-establishment camp being void of any political ethics. They collude with the government. The executive and the legislature are working together closely. First, the government disqualified members by taking them to court, and then the government stopped tabling bills and motions at the council. And after that is the loyalists who take advantage of our numbers. Mr. Daniel Kwok, call for quorum. Well, there is a quorum here, actually. Please check for yourself. Mr. Ted Hui, please. Okay. So, for this term of the council, it's actually the pro-establishment camp that performs the worst. They have no political ethics to speak of. They are just sneaky for their own political interests. They don't mind to subject this whole council to constant political combat, and they want to push through amendments to the rules of procedure. Now, the loyalists always complain that we engage in filibustering, standing in the way of the council dealing with people's livelihood issues. But now it's the government who's not tabling any people's livelihood issues. So why don't you criticize the government? Now, the Chief Secretary said the government's not tabling bills because they have regard to the latest developments. By that means the loyalists are taking advantage of the unfair disqualification of members. And taking this such opportunity, the loyalists want to amend the rules of procedure. So the government is helping out the loyalists in this exercise. And then the loyalists are taking advantage of our minority. So that's why the Democratic camp has to resort to all means, strategies, making use of the rules of procedure and so on to try to defend our role to monitor the government. In some interviews recently, again, it's Mr. Porcher. Mr. Porcher is the young Democrats. They are for real. Yes, I can tell you that, Porcher, and I can tell the lawyers, yes, indeed, we are for real here. In the face of the pro-establishment camp taking advantage of our plight to amend the rules of procedure, we have the determination to fight to the bitter end. Yes, this is for real. Of course, the pro-establishment camp dominates the Electoral Commission. You can do anything. You can accuse me of hitting a security guard. Tomorrow you can accuse me of trying to kill a security guard. I think the public can see that for themselves clearly. Members, please remain quiet. Mr. Ted Hui, please come back to Rule 40(1), please. Yes, of course. Of course, I don't think I've ever digressed. I've been complaining all the time why I think the pro-establishment camps is bad, and that's why I want to stop the debate. So, for this attempt to amend the rules of procedure, it actually is about the life or death of this council. If we allow the pro-establishment camp to amend the rules of procedure, that means this council will no longer have power to monitor government. So that's the death of the council. It's not just about the younger Democrats. It's about the whole Democratic camp fighting this together to the bitter end. Now, some may say, well, but you've got enough votes, it doesn't matter what you do. That's actually the attitude of the pro-establishment camp. So, is it the case that just because you have enough votes in this council, you rule? Well, yes, I heard you say yes. But I want to tell you why you have enough votes in this council. First, you are returned by small circle elections, many of you. Some have no votes. You are elected automatically. And so how dare you say you have enough votes? And then second reason why you have enough votes is because the government and the loyalists are working together. The government is helping you. Because the government disqualified the directly elected members, and that's why you have enough votes. That's why. So I need to tell the public about it. So it's not the case that because at this point in time you have enough votes in this council, then you call the shots. You have to have regard to political ethics. But when you disregard political ethics, you think you have enough votes and you pass these amendments. You think this will do good for the community? With this constant bickering, do you think it will be good for the operation of this council in future? Now, Mr. Alvin Yeung moved the motion to adjourn, and those are the arguments he gave. So let's take a pause and consider it. I don't think the public wants to see this council being locked in arguments and bickering. So can the government show some wisdom? Can the pro-establishment camp allow some room for the people of Hong Kong? Allow us a way out. Don't take advantage of our plight. Don't distort this already distorted council further. Don't try to inflame more fights here. Now, Matthew John said it's a matter of considering circumstances, and then if we keep being locked in this argument about the rules of procedures and the amendments, does it mean that the government will never table any more motions or bills on people's livelihood issues? I really would like to ask the Chief Secretary that. So this so-called, having regard to the circumstances, how long will that last? And how long will the fight in this council last? Can the pro-establishment camp really take into account the interest of the public and set aside your own interest. Now, I think the public can see that you are amending the rules of procedure just to serve your own interest or the interest of the government. So you're speaking for the government, the so-called making things work more smoothly in this council. That means we can no longer monitor government, so there's no one to exercise check and balance on the government, and then no members could ask questions about white elephant projects, and the Democratic camp could no longer invoke certain procedures to say set up select committees to investigate into the abuse of powers or negligence of the government, or government's abusing its powers for private gains and so on. Now, over the years, we've read about news report that officials were found to be corrupt. We don't know if that's a majority or not, but it's important that this council has investigative powers, and then it's very important. So please think about that and stop now, loyalists. Dr. Helena Wong. Madam Deputy, I speak in support of the motion moved by Mr. Alvin Young under Rule 40(1) to adjourn the debate. Now, what we are trying to adjourn here is, of course, the amendments to the rules of procedure. Now, I speak in support of this motion to adjourn the debate. Why? Because I think we really should think about it again. Why do we need to rush things? Why do we need to work extra time? Why must we pass all these amendments by next Monday before we stop? I think we can all see that it's because the loyalists propose amendments to the rules of procedure, then us in the pan-democratic camp also move amendments, including myself. So, but can we not adjourn the debate now to resolve these conflicts? Is it really that urgent? Well, I don't think so. If the pro-establishment camp, including, then I'm sure the pan-democrats, including myself, would be more than willing to shelve our amendments. So the question is, why is it that the loyalists won't compromise? Why must they try to finish it within the next few days? That's because 6 Democratic camp members have been disqualified, and so the pro-establishment camp saw an opportunity here. They can take advantage or apply it. Of course, they are not going to miss out. Because we have voting by 2 groups of members here. So at the functional constituency, that means there will be majority, and then for the geographical constituency, it's also necessary to have a majority support before the amendments can be passed. Now, so the pro-establishment was trying to rush this through. I think I can explain that through this political opportunity structure. It's because after the by-election, when the Democratic camp is returned to this council, then they will not have majority support in the one of the groups, and then they will not be able to push through the amendments to the rules of procedure. So they take advantage of a minority, and they want to change the rules of procedure. Why? Now, many members of the pro-establishment camp have been doing road shows. They are trying publicizing a broadcasting message on buses and so on. They say it's because they want to counter filibustering. So it's actually misleading to try to package the amendments to the rules of procedure simply as an effort to counter filibustering. They try to deceive the public or fool them. Now, definitely, this in the amendments proposed, that includes amendments to Rule 20 on petitions. Now, under Rule 20, 20 members need only 20 members need to rise, and then a petition could be made. Today we had 2 petitions, and both had more than 20 members supporting them. But the pro-established camp is proposing to increase the number to 35 members. Is it reasonable? Or before we even talk about whether it's reasonable, let's talk about this. Now, about the threshold for moving petition. What is that related to filibustering? There's no relation whatsoever. That's why I say the pro-establishment camp is fooling the public. Petition, how long does it take? Now, I've been involved in some petitions in the past, like investigating the duty visits conducted by the Mr. Timothy Tong while he was the commissioner of the ICAC, or investigation into CY Leung's UGL case, or investigating into a cost overrun of Express Rail Link. Now, that petition only took about 5 minutes. Like this morning, we moved 2 motions. The first one was moved by Dr. K.K. Kwok on behalf of the Pan-Democrats. It's about looking into the cost overrun of the Hong Kong Choi Macau Bridge by 20%. So we will have to pay $120 billion. And we're talking about $120 billion cost overrun of 20%. And I was just watching the video again. It didn't even take 4 minutes, just 3 minutes, 50 something seconds to deal with that petition. And the second petition was about the Link selling some of his assets, shopping malls and so on. And then Mr. Jeremy Tam moved the motion on behalf of other members. Again, it took just about 4 minutes to deal with that petition. So the loyalists are now fooling the public. They say they want to increase the threshold from 20 to 35 members, but it actually has nothing to do with filibustering or stopping filibustering. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 55 seconds, at most 5 minutes, that was the record. And still they wouldn't allow it. So we have to ask the loyalists this. What is the real purpose of the amendments? Because you are now fooling the public.
So I hope members of the public understand what is happening in this council. So is this threshold reasonable or not? Of course, the threshold for lodging a petition is highly unreasonable, because the design of our political system is such that although the words separation of powers are not clearly stated in the Basic Law, but obviously the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary has very well-defined functions and roles. And Article 64 of the Basic Law, the executive has to be accountable to the legislature, and therefore it is our duty to monitor the government. And under Article 73(8) of the Basic Law, as legislators, we have to receive and handle complaints from Hong Kong residents. Of course, we can be duty members at our complaints division. But the presentation of petitions is one way we discharge our duties under the Basic Law. And the Basic Law allows us to present petitions. And if the loyalists are changing the threshold for presentation of petitions from 20 to 35 members, the real effect is only pro-establishment members can present petitions. Whereas for Pandems, in this term, we will never be able to meet this threshold. You are in effect depriving pro-democratic members of the right to discharge our function given to us under the Basic Law. I haven't come to your amendment to change the quorum of council sitting from 35 to 20. So how come for some threshold you've increased it, for some others you've lowered it? I think the political motive is crystal clear. You want to protect the government. You want to be pro-establishment to the extent that only you can present petitions. Of course, you're not going to do that because you are government friendly. You think that you're not going to exercise this power. Even if you do, you can always reach this threshold. This council is full of loyalists, and you are changing the rules of the game. As a result, Pandems cannot exercise our duty under the Basic Law. You are violating the Basic Law, upsetting our political system in Hong Kong. This is an executive government. Powers are vested with the government, and the right we have is only to monitor it. If the right to monitor the executive, to present petitions, to lodge and handle complaints will be undermined. You're not undermining your own powers. Rather, you are curtailing our rights. Under the Basic Law, we are legislators, just as you are. We have to exercise our powers. If you're going to tighten the RoP to the extent that only you have the opportunity to present petitions, then this is not consistent with the Basic Law. The Basic Law doesn't make a distinction between whether you are from the pro-establishment camp or the pan-democratic camp. We enjoy equal rights, constitutionally speaking, but you are cheating this time. Your amendments are against the spirit of the Basic Law. When it comes to the quorum for this council, under Article 75 of the Basic Law, it should be no less than 1/2 of all its members. Now, your amendment is not changing the quorum required for a council sitting, but for the committee stage. The committee stage of a sitting should require the same number of members to form a quorum, but you're going to lower that to 20. The President has sought legal advice from 2 lawyers, independent lawyers, and their advice is this is clearly against the Basic Law. And yet, regrettably, the President has ignored legal advice from its independent lawyers, and the pro-establishment camp has got its own legal advice, and the President has gone by it without any explanation. So even if the amendment is passed, you face the likelihood of a judicial review. So will you then ask the central government to interpret the Basic Law? You are causing trouble for the central authorities. All right. Whether you will violate the Basic Law aside, your original plan is to guillotine our filibuster so that we cannot be in your way, and then you have more time to go to the races, and you don't have to sit here through sittings. Or perhaps Carrie Lam's government may think that while she acted like a bystander, I think actually she really wants to see the rules of procedure changed, thinking that these amendments will improve executive-legislative relations. She thinks that the rift will be mended, and that the passing of motions and legislation will be more efficient. This is an entirely wrong judgment. This judgment by Carrie Lam and the pro-establishment camp is utterly wrong. If you bulldoze through these amendments here, you will only cause further divisions in society and in this council. We will even be more polarized. I truly believe that with amendments to the RoP, funding applications to PWSC, to ESC and FC, and the vetting of bills here will encounter even more difficulties than they do now. This is inviting trouble for yourself, more haste, more waste. in the past, when there were non-controversial bills, rarely would pandemics ask for BC to be set up. But in changing the RoP, I think you have a political price to pay. For sure, you are not going to see more efficient passage of bills and motions. I believe the engine will only move slower rather than faster. So why the trouble? Now, if you want to achieve a win-win situation for the sake of Hong Kong and for the sake of having a council that takes its duties and functions seriously in monitoring the executive as required by the basic law, I think we should all give and take. Let us withdraw all our amendments, and then we sit down and discuss again. I'm not a member of the CROP. I didn't have the opportunity to witness whether due procedures were followed, and there was ample debate in the committee. But according to members who were members of the CROP, I could only hear two words: disappointment and also frustration. So without proper debate, and we force through the amendments to the RoP, this is certainly not to the benefits of Hong Kong. Mr. Roy Kwong, I'd like to speak on the motion to adjourn this debate. The pro-establishment members are now very hardworking. They would even forfeit their 15-minute recess, usually at 1:45 of the hour. So why are you so eager? Why are you so anxious? Members have elaborated on the background enough. I won't repeat further. Well, we have this member who confronted Dr. Anna Wong last week, and now he called our member shameless, or Jeremy Tam shameless, and I think Mr. Porter, is being deliberately provocative. Speakers off mic. Point of order. Mr. Roy Kwong quoted what Mr. Porter said, saying that he used offensive language about me, but then Mr. Dare withdrew at once. So I hope Mr. Roy Kwong would not use such offensive language anymore. Now, this is not really a point of order. May I remind members that you should refrain from using offensive language against members here. I have tried my best to be lenient, but of course, at the heat of a debate, it is inevitable that we have arguments and counter-arguments. I hope members can be careful in this debate. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tam. And, all right, such remarks were withdrawn, or that's better, for a language that shouldn't be used, and if can be withdrawn, is the best. And if motions that are not proper can be withdrawn, then is the best, so that we can return to our normal state of business. But of course, it is Mr. Porter's style to make offensive remarks just to withdraw them afterwards. Now we are at war now. We like to take this opportunity to ask members to think again. Now, if these amendments to undermine our powers, to tighten our powers, and to undermine our dignity in making speeches and debate in this council. Now, if these amendments got passed through, would it be the case that only one side suffer? Perhaps a few decades down the road, looking back, we'll say that this has opened the Pandora box. The basic law is abundantly clear. and yet they are trying to be tricky, saying that it is okay to change the quorum of our council sitting. In fact, this is a very serious matter, and should there be a judicial challenge later? Now, you may say that committee of the council is not really a full sitting, but I think all of us here know that it is in fact a proper council sitting time. Members of the public are asking how come the quorum should be reduced from 1/2, that is 35, to 20. The fact is so that we can all call it a day early and we can go home. Now, if for a company there should be 35 employees to make it work and is now reduced to 20, will we really have enough members or enough employees to examine motions that are so important to our community and to people's livelihood? And then motions, adjournment motions, will also be controlled. And you may say that adjournment motions would cause you to filibuster, but then you have to bear in mind that we're allowed to move an adjournment motion under the RoP. So we say that now is the time to pause and to think twice. Do we have to allow our relations to get so tense? And one of the amendments will allow sitting to be reconvened even after it is adjourned. Our president already enjoys great powers, and if it is a not so good president, by giving him more powers, this will be a tremendous obstacle for our future operation. At normal times, well, in the first year of a term, members will have motions waiting to be debated. Now, myself has got a bill on animal protection, and the motion was passed without any amendments and unanimously. So you're not doing that.
Now that several members from the Democratic camp have been disqualified, you are taking this opportunity to amend the RoP. Do you think this will be the end of the matter? You may think that it's just a one-off exercise and everything will be all right afterwards. But that's not the case. In the past, we were able to join hands and push forward something across the political spectrum. You're now hurrying this through before Christmas, and then in 2018, I really cannot imagine how we can conduct debate in this council. I can't imagine how we can do something right in this council because the rules have changed. These rules are fundamental. In the past, we needed a quorum to present a petition, and that quorum was 20. This morning, we just presented some petitions, and then now you propose to raise it to 35, so that it will be in your hands whether to launch an investigation or not. But you don't know. One day, when we finally have a majority in this council, the situation may change completely. That happened in the 90s. So must you go all the way so as to reduce or increase the quorum for presenting petition as well? This morning we presented a petition on the link read. We follow up on that. And also on the CY Leung's UGL incident, we presented a petition before. If the system is abused, the public is discerning, and definitely the consequence will appear in the next election. Please pause. Please pause. Mr. Jeremy Tam has a point of order. Will members please note that you must not turn the ringtone on for your mobile phone in this council. Please continue. When we still have order in this council, when we still have rules in this council, we follow the rules and we're given space. But now you are driving us to a corner. You are limiting our space so that even after by-election next year, when we have a few more members in our camp, it will be futile anyway, because by then the RoPs would have changed. And then we could only struggle to survive in this revised RoP. And this is really furious. Presenting a petition originally requires only 20 members to remain standing. And you are having your way to the extent that you're increasing the quorum for that. About shortening the time for division from 5 minutes to 1 minute, etc. We used to bicker about this as well. I can understand it. But when it comes to presenting a petition, they require quorum. You need to explain to the public. And also 5 minutes down to 1, we again need to debate with you because of the draconian bills. We're in the minority. We must resort to every means such that we deploy different tactics within the limited space in the RoP. We play the delay tactic to stall the passage of draconian bills. And now you take this opportunity to amend the RoPs once and for all when we have a few members missing in our camp. Well, is it really a solution to resolve political conflicts? Let's look back. At the outset, we actively spoke, and then we're close to formally starting the debate. And many members actually made quite some vicious remarks. But why do we need to do that? Because we're defending not only our rights to speak, but also your rights to speak, because you need to help your electors as well. You need to air your views on matters of your concern as well. Why is it that you're taking away the already limited space from us? Madam Deputy, I think on this occasion it is not easy for the public to understand what is going on in this council. But if we just sit on our laurels towards the end of 2017 and allow the RoPs to be amended, that there is no way for us to block the passage of any draconian bill in the future. The former President Jesper Zhang criticized the matter. He said that we have to act prudently. Whether we should come to this state. We have this motion to adjourn the debate. Previously, we also moved other motions. For example, we wanted to invoke the electoral powers and privileges ordinance to summons public officers to give an explanation on certain social issues. We wanted to have a break for us to mull over the matter. You refused. You want to make sure that the RoP amendment motions will be passed on Monday. Maybe that side of the council is thinking, just hang on for a few days, and then after Monday, after Tuesday, we don't need to listen to your nonsense anymore. And that's the way I would describe it. But then Mr. Paul Chair might be saying that Roy Kwong the other day spoke nonsense. I didn't say that. We'll all have our purpose in this council. That's why you are a legislator in this council. You want to do good for your voters. You want to do something for your voters, for your sector. Now, the pro-establishment camp, being the majority in this council, wants to drive us to a corner. If the RoPs is not amended, they might not be able to tackle us. But you might be able to hurry through the amendment motion before Christmas, but you won't be able to solve this problem, and that is, in the future, if a draconian bill is tabled, and if there is no way for us to fight back in this council, how would you visit the community and blow your own trumpet? These are really fundamental issues, and you're trying to change even the quorum for presenting a petition, etc. You're going too far. This may happen both ways. You may do something to us today, but tomorrow you may be the victim. Well, as long as there is a quorum in this council, the meeting can go on, and then everybody can take an early rest. Is this what the voters expect of you? Well, each member will be given 15 minutes to speak. And of course, we understood that for the previous week, some spoke for the purpose of delaying the matter. But some members really gave serious speeches. They did their homework. They would like to make meaningful use of the council's time. You should not belittle anyone. But now it's polarized. You are the angel, we are the enemies. You want to change your RoP and we are in your way. That's not the case. Maybe a few years later, when you're no longer a member here, you might reflect on yourself and you might agree that you were really going too far, and the RoPs, especially about presenting a petition, has been amended so drastically. I so submit. Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting, Madam Deputy, I speak in support of Mr. Elvin Yeung's motion moved under 41A to adjourn the debate. Madam Deputy, we are moving this adjournment motion because the pro-establishment camp proposes to change RoP. The most important amendment is about the quorum of this council. According to Article 75 of the Basic Law, it is clearly stipulated that the quorum for the meeting of the Legislative Council shall not be less than 1/2 of all its members. And according to the Legal Counsel and Mr. Ambrose Ho and Mr. Jonathan Jay engaged by the Legislative Secretariat, it is said that very clearly.
Article 75 applies throughout a legislative meeting, and there is no room to argue that the quorum requirement could be limited to the particular junctures or stages of a legislative meeting. 講得好清楚嘅，佢哋嘅法。
Well, so it's very clear. Their legal advice is that the Legislative Council, or even the Committee of the whole Council, requires quorum with half of all our members in the Council. Regrettably, an alternative approach was taken to deal with these pieces of legal advice received. The President, Mr. Andrew Leung, normally would say that we need to follow the legal advice. Now, we have legal advice from two councils saying the opposite. So what should we do? He then turned to the legal advice sought by the pro-establishment camp, and then he said we should consult the views of other members. Now, isn't it the same as passing the president's power to make rulings on the pro-establishment camp so that the pro-establishment camp can make a ruling on his behalf in favor of their own camp, while the president should have exercised independent thinking on the legal advice received. So you're being a sore loser. I urge Mr. Andrew Leung not to seek legal advice again, because it's a waste of the Legislative Council's resources. Instead, he should just ask the pro-establishment camp to seek legal advice. And then, according to the legal advice received, according to the majority's views, he can then make a ruling. He can just be a puppet of the pro-establishment camp. He don't need to go through all these. Madam Deputy, clearly, this amendment exercise is going to take powers away from us, especially our functions as checks and balances of the government. 2 members this morning presented the petitions, one relating to Link Reid, and Mrs. Regina Ip from the New People's Party stood and supported the Democrats in presenting a motion to set up a select committee to look into the matter of Link Reid. Regrettably, Ms. Eunice Yong, also from the New People's Party, did not stand up. I'd like to say this to Mrs. Yip. This exactly shows that if the quorum for presenting a petition is raised, even if Mrs. Regina Yip, you may have a strong view on the matter of Link Reid, even if you would like to conduct an in-depth investigation and question the public officers, I'm sorry, Mrs. Yip, there won't be such an opportunity, because you won't be able to even canvass the support of your fellow party member Eunice Yong, not to mention the 30-odd other members in your camp to investigate into Link Reid. It's impossible. In the last CE election, Mrs. Ip, you were the victim. You understood the harm of a small circle election. I once again urge you to veto the amendments to the RoP, because once the amendments are passed, in the future, if we have another incident involving public interest and you wish to set up a select committee, there won't be any way for you to do so. So please mend your ways and consider helping us.
Then there are other members who said the petition, what has it to do with filibustering? I think we all know it well. You know, petition, what has it to do with filibustering? Nothing at all. Now, for select committee set up under petition, that's to investigate C.Y. Leung's UGL case. We're talking about the highest ranking official in the government involved in a major corruption case. Many in the community are very concerned about it. It is about the reputation of Hong Kong. So the council should should be able to summon witnesses under the Powers and Privileges Ordinance or requires the production of documents. But the pro-establishment camp used the majority to vote down the proposal to invoke the Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So what we can do is for standing members to rise and set up a select committee to follow up on the issue. Of course, is you know, there's obstacle all the way, but we will still pursue the matter to the end. Maybe at the end, our investigation leads to nowhere, but at least we have tried our best. And then, if we did not have that select committee, we would never know that Holden Chow was on such good terms with C.Y. Leung. They colluded together to interfere with the work of the select committee. He was the bouncer of C.Y. Leung. He amended the documents of the subcommittee and submitted it, pretending it to be his own amendments. So that shows that Holden Chow is totally incompetent and stupid and also lazy. Now, if it weren't because of the Select Committee, we would not have exposed this dark side of the pro-established camp. If it weren't for this Select Committee, we would not have exposed the hypocrisy of CY Leung, because on the one hand, he said he would cooperate with the Select Committee. On the other, he refused to attend the hearings of the Select Committee. So these are the only powers we have left in monitoring government, and you want to take that away, and what has it to do with filibustering? You don't need to come to the Select Committee meetings. We can attend the meetings. It doesn't affect or doesn't stand in way of the passage of any bills or any decisions on people's livelihood issues. Don't try to deceive the public. So I would like to appeal to Mrs. Regina Yip again. Please show your courage, and maybe you could also convince Mr. Yong Hoi Yan to vote against the amendments to the rules of procedure. Now, Mr. Stephen Ho did a Facebook video, and Mr. Ben Chan said, Mr. Stephen Ho was most humorous. It was a brilliant video. And then Mr. Stephen Ho said that he said that our slogan is that today we amend the rules of procedure, tomorrow is about legislating for Article 23. And then he said these are two separate matters. Now, for amending the rules of procedures, that needs voting by two groups of members. But for legislating for Article 23, that's an important piece of legislation. It requires 2/3 majority of this council to pass that. So that means over 40 members. It's similar to the arrangement for the constitutional reform. Now, I'm sure Mr. Ben Chan wasn't playing any tricks on Mr. Stephen Ho. Perhaps he just did not know that for government bills, there's no need for 2/3 majority to pass. We only need 50% majority. And so Mr. Stephen Ho wasn't trying to deceive the public. He just didn't know he got it wrong. So everyone can make mistakes. I make mistakes too sometimes. But you know what? Does this mistake show up? It shows that Mr. Stephen Ho or individual members of the pro-establishment camp do not know that the amendments to the rules of procedure would undermine our powers, in particular powers of the Pan-Democrats to monitor the government. Well, you think that even if we amend the rules of procedure, we still have the right to veto? No, we no longer have that power. So that's why the only way is for us to filibuster, so we could block evil laws that undermine the human rights and freedoms of the people. So, Mr. Stephen Ho, get the facts right before you state your case. Now, Andrew Leung kept telling the media that we will have additional meetings. It's hoped that this council will go back to the normal state. What is normal state? Normal state is this council should not have functional constituencies. There should not be privileged castes in this council to defend vested interests. This should not be here. So by normal state in this council, there should not be a president who's swore allegiance to the British Empire, and then all of a sudden he's become a Chinese citizen. Now, in this council, the majority is the pro-establishment camp. They already, in this council, it should be those with the majority votes to be the ruling party, and that's what we call by a normal state. Madam Deputy. I hope other members won't speak while a member is speaking. Yes, please, members, remain quiet while a member is speaking. Mr. Lam, please continue. Now, President Andrew Leung said that this council should go back to normal state, and this coming from him is really ironic. There has never been any normalcy in this council. It's just that now it's becoming even more abnormal. Mr. Andrew Wong, former president of this council, he is also my teacher. A few days ago, he came to this council for a gathering with members, and he made this clear. Lowering the or reducing the quorum is against the basic law. He thinks is unconstitutional, and he thinks that there should be consensus among parties before there are amendments to the rules of procedure. Yes, what's your point of order? Is there a quorum? Yes, there is. Mr. Lam, please continue. Mr. Andrew Wong, yes, please hold. Yes, Mr. Edichi, what is your point of order? Well, other members asked me to do a head count first, but because where I sit, it's difficult for me to see, so I hope members can be more understanding. That's not a point of order. Mr. Lam, please continue. Members, please remain quiet. Mr. Lam, please continue. Mr. Andrew Wong, former legislative councillor, also said, even if the rules of procedures are amended, there's no way you could stem out filibustering. Now, this council is in an abnormal state. But in the past, there is still a certain degree of check and balance. For example, petitions, which I've repeatedly mentioned. So through petitions, we can set up a select committee, or through other procedures in dealing with bills and motions, we could block bills or motions that severely undermine the basic rights of the people. Now, if you want to eliminate even such powers and you think you'll win, no, sorry, you're wrong. You may win a battle, but you will not win the war. After this battle, there will be another battle, there will be a third one, fourth one, fifth one, and so on. Because now there is a breakdown in the relations between the two parties. It's not like Andrew Leung said, then afterwards everything will be back to normal. No, it will never happen. So that's why I would ask the loyalists to consider this. There is so much tension here. Do you want to destroy our powers to monitor the government? That's self-castration. In the past, we've had little powers, and you think that is not good enough. You want a full concentration. You want to even amputate our arms, our limbs. Now, this is not right, and you can't face the people of Hong Kong. Ms. Tanya Chen. I think in the past hour or two, we saw the pro-establishment camp all sitting here. They won't even walk out at 45 minutes of the hour. And I was just telling Jeremy Tam that if we see any of them stand up, then it's time to call for quorum. But in the past hour or two, they've all been sitting here, so they must have received orders. It's hoped that probably with enough of a quorum, then today, probably they hope that they could vote on the motion to adjourn moved by Mr. Alvin Yeung. Now, if you don't speak, I'm sure you're doing the counting as well. So Eddie Chu would be the last to speak. I'll be the second last to speak. Now, Mr. Alvin Yeung has moved the motion to adjourn the debate. Of course, I will support his motion. And taking this opportunity, I would like to thank the Secretariat. Now, there are amendments moved by different parties. I believe the Secretary must have done a lot of work. Because if you've read the documents, and you can see there is this horizontal table giving a summary of the proposed amendments, so members could refer to them. But I really doubt how many members in the pro-establishment camp would understand what these amendments are about. I'm sure even the public couldn't understand them, because these are not just any amendments, but these amendments are to totally change the culture of this council. So these are important amendments. Now, they kept saying is to stop members from filibustering, especially for new members here. They are exploiting their powers to the full. That's what they said. Well, for the 2016 election, or even earlier, earlier than that, actually, we know the pro-establishment camp has been hoping to change their amendments, and now they have this golden opportunity to do so. And after these amendments pass, then this council will not be the same again. You know, the first time I was a member, it was in 2008. Of course, some of the members here may have joined this council earlier than that. I think we could all see the change in the culture of this council. Is it true that some of this culture is unacceptable? Well, we're all adults. I mean, if it's a soccer match, at least we have to tell people, show people it's a fair match. Now you are the referee, you are the soccer players, and that's not good enough. So you move the goalpost anywhere you like. Now you just move away the goalpost altogether. You just kick and then you score. And then now you even want to change the rules of the match. So you can do whatever you want after you change the rules. And I said I find this sad because now I'm not going to talk about the quorum for the committees of the council. I'm not going to speak on the legal advice on that. Rather, I want to talk about petitions. Mr. Lam Cheuk-Ting spoke just before me. You know, on the UGL case, and on all that C.Y. Leung did, he has been following up on that most closely.
As we all know, what a petition can do is to set up a select committee. Is just a platform for us to follow up. Looking back, our history in this council, well, you might have noted that last week I was not in this council because I was in the UK representing council on a business trip to participate in a Public Accounts Committee meeting. Dr. Kwok Kai-ki, Mr. Jeremy Tam, this morning presented perhaps the last two petitions with a threshold of 20 members in this council before the amendments to the RoP. I witnessed it with mixed feelings. As we all know, our accounts committee, our public accounts committee, perhaps is the only committee in this council of this term to invoke our electoral powers and privileges ordinance to look into matters. The chairman of the PAC is also here. From what I saw in the UK, or more civilized countries would have chairman of PAC from the opposition party, but in Hong Kong, this is just luxury or is just wishful thinking. In PAC, we can urge the administration or public organization involved to spend public resources or tax money more wisely, regardless of our political affiliation. This is not easy because we share the common goal in the PAC. And in this term, we don't have any opportunity to set up a select committee anymore to invoke the LegCo PNP ordinance. Of course, we have got select committees set up under the presentation of petitions. But however, such committees do not have the power to summon witnesses to give testimony. And so we are more or less, well, our hands are tied. However, if the threshold for making a petition work is raised to 35, this is really regrettable. This will remove one opportunity for us to monitor organizations that are not really government departments but are funded by public money. Looking back, we were able to set up select subcommittee in 2008 to 2011. We had one to set up to look into Mr. Leung Chee-man's conduct and also the so-called West Kowloon Gate incident. That was during the period when Mr. C.Y. Leung was about to run in the CE race, and he was asked to give testimony here. And the chairman of the select committee was pro-establishment member. Back then, we were able to invoke the LegCo PNP ordinance that will cause the executive to really respect this legislature, so that the legislature will not just be a rubber stamp to follow the command of the government. Without this PNP ordinance, our powers will be greatly undermined. We have the select committee to investigate Mr. Leung Chee-man, and we also had the West Kowloon Gate. There were reports for both select committees. If I remember correctly, there was also a by report out of the second select committee. Now we should have an additional forum with a smaller membership to try to find out, unearth the facts for members of the public so that we can seek redress. Yet they are seeking to increase the number of members required in such a presentation to 35. Now I'm afraid I'm not as optimistic as other members here. I am more pessimistic. It's been 20 years after the handover. I can only see tighter control over this council. The opportunity of setting up another select committee to invoke our LegCo PNP ordinance without the support of the pro-establishment camp, the chance will only become more and more unlikely. And with the amendment to RoP 20, I think even these toothless tigers will not appear again. I really don't want to speak too long. President. Is with mixed feelings that I see how we're going to amend our RoPs. In the past, when we intended to amend our RoP, we would conduct public consultation, we would do a questionnaire survey, we would consult members' views, there would be briefings, there would be all sorts of procedures hoping to collect public opinions before the RoP concerned was amended. And yet, very hastily, we have put the amendments to the RoP to this council for a debate. I believe the president would rather want it to be bulldozed through quickly. The president doesn't really want to wait until after the new year, and I think he would want to see it passed or see them passed by Monday, if not anyway within this year. As Dr. Fernando Cheung mentioned, this arrangement has caused disruptions to many meetings. I'm chairman of the EA panel. Of course, our regular meeting has been rescheduled, and the Secretariat has been so considerate. It has even rescheduled our meetings for Tuesday. We originally had a public hearing, and at first we wanted to merge the special meeting and regular meeting on Tuesday, but I think they would like to remove everything to make way for this. I think even the PAC meeting has been rescheduled this afternoon. We're supposed to meet the press to present our findings after the PAC has considered several audit reports, but everything has to give way, and things of concern to the public have to give way, and things that are controversial have to give way. In fact, majority views. We have the majority support of the public, but in this council, we have become the minority. In this council, now, the majority of the members here, although they only have minority support in the community, they are the majority here, and they can speak the loudest here. When we vote on this matter, I'm sure history will record the moment, and is really regrettable. We say that the rules of procedure are for gentlemen, and perhaps we second guess the one another, and we may not consider ourselves gentlemen and not the other party. I hope we will not give up good for the sake of evil. I hope we can still have some grace as a gentleman. And I might be the last to speak here. Now, this is already the last moment. I hope you can still consider LegCo a place with dignity and respect, and I hope your future speeches can show some quality, and let it be recorded in history that even for this term of LegCo, even we're on this very controversial matter, we are able to debate the facts with reason, with quality, and with dignity. Thank you. Mr. Eddie Ju. President, I'd like to deal with a point of order. Can you stop the timer first? I have a point of order. What is your point of order? Yes. Because I understand that LegCo Commission has decided to cut the number of members of the public attending a meeting, observing a meeting, to 10. Now, today, nothing has happened. Maybe tomorrow, the day after, and yet the day after, you can reconsider this decision, because this will limit the opportunity for members of the public to observe our meetings. Now, this is a decision by the LegCo Commission, and you should deal with this matter on another occasion. Thank you, President. I speak to support Mr. Alvin Young's adjournment motion moved under RoP 41. As a preamble, I'd like to say that this afternoon, a few members have moved a motion to adjourn. For mine, it was raised very seriously. I hope I took it serious. On the 25th of November, there was a letter from the President to all of us on Dr. Martinez's proposal to amend the requirement for quorum of this sitting. There was nothing in the President's letter on whether it was constitutional or not. Now, I'm of the view that it may, and according to the President, it was not really, I was not sure it would reach the basic law, and he would put the item to the Council. And yet, in making that ruling, the President has forgotten that many people, including Mr. Andrew Wong, have said that this very important amendment on the quorum for this sitting has been bundled up with other amendments. So we really need an opportunity to speak on and to vote on this very important amendment on changing the quorum required for a council sitting. So when you disallowed my adjournment motion, President, I was hoping that pro-establishment members would take the opportunity to consider RoP 41, whether lowering the quorum requirement for a logical sitting will risk violating the basic law. And just in case the amendment is passed here, can we really bear the consequence of this possible legal consequence, because the President has passed the buck to us. Returning to the topic now. The logic from the loyalists is a three-step process. First, there is filibustering in this council, and the problem is getting more and more serious. And the second step is we should muster all the efforts of society to counter filibustering. And third, the most effective way of doing it is to amend our rules of procedure. So they have this three-step logic. I'm of the view that all three steps are wrong in one way or another, and in totality, I believe I should support Mr. Alvin Young's motion of adjournment, and we should not go into the next stage of our proceedings. Many members may be taken aback. Starting from 2016, that is this term of council, there is in fact no more filibustering in this council.
Some members may disagree with me. On filibustering, I have quite a clear definition. The clear definition, in my view, is this: whether or not it's a member from the majority or the minority, a member should be allowed to speak or raise point of order for unlimited times so as to delay the vetting of a bill to the extent that we cannot go on any further. This is what is called filibustering. And if we take a look at the U.S. example, basically, senators may speak without any time limit imposed, and the president cannot stop them. Their mechanism is that if 3/5 of senators in the Senate moves a motion to cut the filibustering short, it can be cut short. But it's not the chairman or president to decide that. Now, if the government is creating tension such that both camps need to sit down and discuss, we're talking about the committee stage. Because at the committee stage, we can have a meaningful debate. We can go back and forth all our arguments, and members can speak without any limit as to the number of times. But Jasper Zhang, a few years ago, during the budget debate, made the decision to cut short filibustering, leading to a judgment handed down by the Court of Final Appeal. Afterwards, in Hong Kong, there was no more filibustering. So in my view, the definition of filibustering is not the same. what the minority can do is to take part actively in engage in the affairs of this council proactively. So if we don't have a clear definition of filibustering, we will be going down the slippery slope. That is what the pro-establishment camp suggests when they tell the public that it's the Democrats' filibustering effort that blocks the passage of bills. Well, I'm not saying that it is wrong to suggest that we should make good use of every minute we have in the council, but I think that we will be going down a slippery slope because it is just normal for the majority to dislike the minority who speaks out because they have the vetoing power, they have the majority. There is no need to listen to the views of the minority. So like Dr. Junis Ho said, they can just have no mercy for the minority. However, if this dissatisfaction with the minority grows into something that that allows them to stop the minority to speak at all for the sake of making every minute count, then I think we need to go back to the issue. As Dr. Kenneth Leung said, I think the spirit of the parliament is to allow debates. Unlike the NPC, well, you just clap hands and you just raise your hands. Speaking is our nature. And if it's not just happening in the minds of the majority, but also in the minds of the public, that it is problematic for members to even speak in this council, then it will set a very bad precedent, because the public won't even understand what our political system is. They won't understand the checks and balances between the legislature and the executive. So coming back to the second step, well, first of all, I don't think filibustering exists in this council anymore, and I don't agree that the pro-establishment camp should mount a publicity campaign to pull over the eyes of the public, saying that every minute in this council counts and the minority should stop speaking. We're going even farther away from creating a civic society. Third, I think that the pro-establishment camp is biased. They have a skewed view of filibustering, and then they also have the anti-filibustering publicity campaign. The third step is for them to amend the RoP. Well, Mr. President, if we just proactively engage in debates instead of filibustering this council, the solution is very simple. We can have more meetings. Comparing to the previous term presided over by the former President Jesper Zhang, in terms of the length and the number of times of meetings, everything has been reduced. And I think many members have noticed that normally we would adjourn at 8, but probably tonight we'll adjourn at 8, but very often we would adjourn the meeting at 7:30 for dinner. And I don't think they're facing the issue squarely. Now, from the pro-establishment camp's perspective, they should face the issues squarely. They should not be shunning debates, because if they think that the argument holds water, they should not be fearing more meetings of the Finance Committee or other committees, or even the committee of the whole council. And Dr. Edward Yu recently said that if the pro-establishment camp continues and insists on the filibustering publicity campaign, we should mount another campaign called the anti-shirking campaign in this council. Because if the quorum for the committee of the whole council is reduced, and then other amendments are passed, such as the President's approval for adjournment motions to be moved, the consequence is that the council meeting time will be shortened. And I appeal to members to consider my proposed solution. In the last term of this council, everybody was quite positive. We may deploy different tactics, but we're still acting within the RoPs. But if now we go outside the RoP and suggest that the RoP should be amended as a solution, Mr. Paul Chair last time said that we should even throw the baby out with the bathwater, or that we will be doomed or we will die. Well, what I'd like to tell Mr. Paul Chair as rebuttal or as explaining to the public is that amending the RoP is not a solution. It is not a cure to the problem. Rather, it's the fatal blow. It's like stabbing right into the heart. We're going to have more meetings in the coming few days. You would think that this would address the problem once and for all. You might think that you just hang on for this episode and then that will be all. I don't think this is the right attitude, but I think that instead we should consider you reap what you sow, and then if you work harder, you will bring more benefits to the council. It is very risky to think that you should just hang on for these coming few days, because this might be the end for everybody. I say that because under one country, two systems, the legislature is an important component to the three powers. Now, if the RoP is amended, like Mr. James Toh said just now, the public will no longer believe that this council will bring any benefit to society, and effectively monitor the government by making extra effort in vetting government motions, etc., by members working harder. And the public will begin to lose faith in the system, and they will give up on the system by not voting. The pro-establishment camp may think that in December we amend the RoP, and then you will all lose steam, and then by March, members, supporters of the Democrats will refrain from voting, and then you will win the by-election as well. If public loses faith, if they lose hope, lose faith in the legislature and the government as a whole, it's pointless. It's pointless for you to win the by-election, because even after amending the RoP, you are putting an end to one country, two systems. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, Mr. Alvin Yeung, do you intend to reply? Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Alvin Yeung. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank all members who have spoken in relation to my adjournment motion. Now, about this motion to adjourn the debate, there is urgency. It is also appropriate because when, Mr. President, you unprecedentedly increase the number of meetings, forcing some members to even change their airplane tickets in order to attend meetings, so that the motion can be passed before Christmas. There is all the more reason for us to move this adjournment motion. Now, we just had a very good example. This morning, when we presented the petition to investigate Link Reed, Mrs. Regina Ip sided with us. She stood up in support of a select committee to be set up to investigate Link Reed. This example exactly illustrates and also help us think whether it is a correct decision to propose a reduction of the quorum for presenting a petition from 35 to 20, or raising the quorum from 20 to 35. As I explained in my opening remarks, it is not just the privilege of the Democrats to use filibustering to delay the passage of bills. The same applies to presenting a petition. Of course, any member can invoke the electrical PNP ordinance to investigate into matters close to their hearts. But we must also face the political reality. Even in the pro-establishment camp, there are different factions and different political parties. If you're a minority in the pro-establishment camp, and if you would like to present a petition, but for some reasons the majority doesn't support you, the only way out is to ask for the support of the minority. If Mrs. Regina Ip this morning stood up to present a petition, this will definitely undermine the power of the minority. I appeal to Mrs. Regina Ip to support this adjournment motion, which will be put to a vote in a minute. Even if this motion is not carried, I hope Mrs. Regina Ip would veto Dr. Martin Liao's proposed amendments, because your vote in the face of a division being claimed would play a very important role. And of course, I also appeal to Ms. Eunice Yong to take this very good opportunity to heed the views of Mrs. Regina Ip. It's time for the New People's Party to show unity. I also urge members to support my adjournment motion for this reason, because of the motion being unconstitutional. Mr. Andrew Wong and Mr. Jasper Zhang, both former presidents of this council, made some remarks in relation to the president's decision to accept this amendment motion. It could be unconstitutional. The electoral secretariat engaged two legal counsel who also put forward the same advice. Now you bundled everything up, and if the motion is carried, and if in the future the court decides that it is unconstitutional, it is questionable whether other amendments to the RoP will be legally binding, or will it be another scenario in which the members who were disqualified would have their votes proven effective, despite that their salaries would have to be reimbursed. And you also engage an external legal advisor to provide legal advice.
Now we could then dispel the concerns of members and the public, and also we could avoid this stalling our work. So please consider it carefully. Now, the third reason why I'm moving this motion to adjourn is targeted at the joint debate. Now, there are 49 amendments. There are 23 Pan-Democrats. Each member may speak for 50 minutes on the amendment. So for 49 amendments, that means 16,000 minutes or so, over 200 hours. Usually, this council has meeting from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, and on Thursday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., so 20 hours. So we take away the time for the oral questions. Also, the pro-establishment will get 50 minutes break every hour, although it did happen in the last 2 hours. But that means every week we have some 30 hours of meeting time. So it would take 21 weeks to finish the debate. Unfortunately, then, for the 49 amendments, President, you just combine them all, so everyone has only 15 minutes to speak. So that means you owe us at least 300 hours of speaking time. So this arrangement is unreasonable, as Dr. Jiang Tongchai mentioned. Now, the amendments to the rules of procedure don't just affect this term. It affects all future terms of this council. So there are far-reaching implications. And if each one is only allowed 50 minutes to speak, isn't that too much of a rush? So I hope President Yu and the pro-establishment camp will pause and review or do some soul searching and consider whether you will leave behind a good or bad name in history. Now, it's often said if you rush, actually you won't get there by rushing. That means if you want to reach your destination, but you try to rush, actually you'll never get there. Well, there's actually a story behind that. That is, someone wanted to become a government official, and then he said, and then the teacher said that you can't rush things, otherwise you don't get anything done in. So for politicians, we don't just look at efficiency, we just don't look at the immediate relief. And then we never get far. If we just look at the petty benefits, we won't get major things done. President Yu have a vision, so I hope you and the pro-establishment camp members will think about this carefully during the Christmas break. That is what we should do, how we should handle the amendments to the rules of procedure. But of course, you want to pass the amendments before the Christmas break. We all know the real reason. So is it the case that just because we want speed and then we could achieve your objective, that is we can address all the chaos in this council? No, I don't think so. I don't think Christmas break should be the deadline. I think Christmas break will be a good time for you all to take a pause and think about it again. Do you want to disregard the consequences in amending the rules of procedure? And is it the case that you shouldn't make concession? Now, I know it's not easy for the pro-establishment camp to stay here for 2 hours to listen to our speeches. I don't intend to use up my 15 minutes. I just want you to consider whether there is really a deadline here. Must we really beat the deadline? So think about it carefully. And I hope you will also think about the consequences. And do you think you'll get what you set out to get? Now, for Christmas presents, we must pass some motions. So passing the motion to adjourn is the best present for everybody. Thank you. Before I put the question on this adjournment motion, I wish to remind members that in accordance with Rule 40(2) and (3) of the Rules of Procedure, if the motion is agreed to, the debate shall stand adjourned. If the motion is negatived, this council shall continue with the joint debate on the proposed resolutions under Article 75 of the Basic Law and the relevant amending motions. And I'll put a question to you that the debate be now adjourned. Mr. Alvin Young claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 5 minutes. Voting begins.
Mr.
Charles Mock, do you wish to vote? Members, please remain quiet. Voting is closed. The results are displayed. 33 present from functional constituency, 9 for, 23 against. From geographical constituencies, 29 present, 13 for, 16 against. The question, I declare the motion negatived. It is now time for us to take a pause and think about things again. Although Mr. Eddie Chu says I'm super lazy, still I would adjourn the council till tomorrow 9 a.m.